Real people, real stories, and real challenges that break the status quo. I'm your host, Živile, and welcome to Perception Paradox. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Perception Paradox, where we bring out authentic stories, entrepreneurial journeys, and just challenge the status quo. And today, our guest is Malcolm Wood, who is a global entrepreneur, and Malcolm has founded and invested in many different businesses, including the multi-award-winning Maximal Concepts. Acclaimed for its flagship brand, Mod 32 is considered by many as the best global luxury Chinese restaurant brand. Besides that, he is an athlete and also environmental filmmaker, creator, and that includes the world-renowned production A Plastic Ocean and as well the Last Glaciers, the movie that was filmed across multiple locations and brings out the relationship between the climate change, mountain environments, and glaciers. And that's just a tiny part of the background of Malcolm. And it's my big honor to welcome you on the podcast. Welcome, Malcolm.
Thank you very much. It's good to be here.
Glad to have you here. Finally, we made it. How are you today? Where are you tuning in from, actually?
So I actually live in Chamonix, which is in front of Mont Blanc, in a small little French village. I've been here for 4 years, but always loved the mountains, always loved the Alps. It's just great, can do all the sports that I really like and then be back home to sort of dial into the US or Asia, depending on the time zones we're dealing with.
That's amazing. I've been to Chamonix once, actually. It's very impressive and unique place, especially where you're just in the town and looking around. But I've never done still helicopter snowboarding yet. It was not enough snow, unfortunately, for the heli skiing. Next time.
Yeah, it's an interesting place because people think of it as a ski resort, and that's like the primary reason you'd come here if you weren't a mountaineer. But it's a 12-month-a-year resort. It's just as good in the summertime. It attracts many, many different types of people who enjoy different types of sports. So it's not just skiing, it's mountaineering, it's paragliding, it's wingsuiting, it's rock climbing, it's
Wow.
a whole bunch of different things. And yeah, it's like the birthplace of alpinism in Europe. And it's one of the deepest vertical valleys in the world as well. So you have one of the biggest vertical reliefs, which is why the wingsuiters and the speedriders love it here.
Mm. How did you choose to move to Chamonix?
Well, actually, I got stuck here in COVID. So I had a house here, and I was living in Hong Kong. So unfortunately, Hong Kong was one of the worst places to be during the pandemic. Everyone was in very long lockdowns, not much space. It's a very densely populated place, very small apartments. So my family was here. We were, in a chalet with a garden. Nice view. We could go trail hiking. We had to keep to ourselves, but it was a no-brainer between the two places, and we've never gone back since.
Oh, wow. That's pretty cool. I mean, it's not a bad place to be based, I have to tell you, especially with the fresh air and the nature. Malcolm, you're wearing so many hats along the way in your career, in your lifestyle. Which kind of experience came to your life first? Was it the sports or business?
I came from a very adventurous family. So my father was into sailing and windsurfing and skiing. He made me learn skiing when I was 2 years old. He used to drag me on sailing expeditions as a kid. I remember being in some very weird places and extreme places with him as a kid. He used to drive me across Africa, me and my brother, in a small Jeep, unassisted, just camping and living off the land. So that was a big influence for me. I think moving back to Asia, where my roots are from, was where I started getting more into the business world. Both my parents are entrepreneurial as well. I think is a big part of why they moved around a lot, because they had the freedom to move around because they were doing their own thing. So I think that influenced me in a way as well.
What was your first business idea that you went all in to try and execute?
So I set up my first business with my current partner, believe it or not, when we
Wow.
were 18 years old. and we've been partners ever since. So it's been almost like 23, 24 years of working
Mm.
together. We were at university. We met in Bristol. We set up a promotions company. I think we were sitting around university, with not much money, thinking how can we make some money? And my mom always said to me, you don't want to be the person eating in the restaurant. You want to be the person owning the restaurant. It's like one of her big sayings to me. So I think we took the approach that we didn't want to be the people going to the parties, but we want to be the people organizing the parties. And so we set up a promotion company, and that was kind of our first dabble into hospitality. And soon after that, we realized marketing was a huge focus of running those businesses. It was how you were communicating to people, how you were getting them into venues. Um, and my partner went off and did a master's in marketing, and I studied finance and financial law. And we decided we're going to then reconvene in Asia, both of us. He was English, and we just thought the opportunity was in Asia. So we just thought, okay, let's pack our bags, go to Asia, and set up a business there. So we had like a game plan the whole way through from when we were 18 years old.
Wow, that's very impressive. And what made you stick for so many years together with your co-founder? Because usually co-founders, I don't know, they do one business, they go different directions, or when they hit the first challenge, they decide, okay, we're not going to work for it. We just gonna do our own thing. What do you think made you stick for so long?
Well, I mean, we do most of our businesses together. He's gone off and done his own stuff. I've gone off and done my own stuff. But we've kept a really good partnership throughout that whole period of time, and we're involved in multiple different businesses together today. I mean, for me, there's kind of two paths to tread when you're setting up a business. One is you try to keep majority control. You try to do it yourself. You look to building a team around you. The other one is finding a good partner to do it with. My approach is always a good partnership is always going to be better than an individual. But it also comes with its problems. Yeah, if you don't get along, if you don't agree, if you argue, you can stalemate the company, all these different things. The advantage of my partnership with Matt is we have completely different skill sets, but we also know each other's skill sets very well. So we can operate independently from each other. We can do the whole business by ourselves, but he's better at the things that I'm not good at, and vice versa. And so when I need some advice on something that I'm not good at, I'll pick up the phone and speak to him. We'll do a download, and we'll sync. So that's been a very successful model throughout my career, and we tend to on various different businesses still collaborate under that model.
Oh, that's very valuable.
Yeah.
That's so having the diversified skill set really helps apparently to build a successful business.
Yeah.
How did sustainability come into your business approach? Because I've seen from the businesses you've been developing and working on and running, sustainability plays a crucial part of your agenda.
Well, I think if you enjoy sort of outdoor sports, rock climbing, paragliding, I'm a big paraglider. I used to kite surf, as we were just talking about.
Mm-hmm.
I did a lot of sailing. You, especially during this period of time, you're seeing in front of your eyes the environment getting destroyed. And I don't think you cannot care about it. And so doing that, like trekking in Asia is terrible now. There's pollution everywhere. You go into any beach in the world, there's microplastics in the sand. A lot of my career was focused around hospitality. Recently, I've been getting, in the last sort of half a decade, I've been getting more into a diverse portfolio, but a lot of what I've done was in hospitality, and that's centered around food and health and wellness. And those things are being attacked today by the environment and pollution and all of those sort of things. And actually, through making movies, I've kind of learnt more about the effects that we're having on the environment and what that means to our health, the health of our kids, our ecosystem, and it's just declining faster and faster. So I don't know. It's not about how did you get involved with it. It's you can see it with your own eyes, and you should care. You know,
Yeah.
I think most people would care if they had the awareness.
That's so true. I remember one of the situations when I was in Indonesia and I went out for the surf session just after the storm. And instead of focusing what my coach was telling me how to, what to do and how to improve my stance, I literally burst into tears because I was paddling and I was paddling among the plastic. And it was the first time I experienced that. And that was the pivoting moment for me. I was like, whoa, we really have to do something about that. And it start from with yourself small and try to see how can we educate each other more on the causes and how can we make a difference. So
Yeah, it's terrible. Actually, there was a study that came out recently that showed that Indonesians eat more microplastics than anyone else in the world today, and it's because of a high seafood diet. And it's just, I mean, it's incredible this problem that we've created. The first movie I was involved in was called The Plastic Ocean, and it was the first documentary to show microplastics going into the food chain and how it was affecting human health. And we brought that out in 2017. And it's crazy. It's like how short a period of time it's been. And then there was another interesting fact. I can't remember it specifically, but I remember reading it and being shocked. It was something like in the next 5 years, we're going to create 3 times more pollution than we did in the previous 10. And into the water, into the environment. So we're not fixing this problem. We're accelerating it. And that's just a scary thought because today I'm avoiding eating so many different foods because of microplastics
yeah,
in the environment. And these are things that I learned from the films. I kind of use the films like as a lesson to myself, and the purpose is to drive awareness, not to make money from them. In fact, making environmental films is extremely difficult, which is one of the reasons I got involved in this in this new company called Olyn, which we can talk about later. But
yeah.
the films are kind of to drive awareness, and it's just, I mean, it's just scary. It's scary that we know this, but we're not doing anything about it.
What I encountered a bit with this mindset that everyone thinks, yeah, but what can I do as a small individual with consuming less plastic or like just talking about that? I'm not going to make a difference. And I don't know why, but I kind of encounter quite a lot of opinions that I'm too small to change anything, so I'm just going to keep my old habits and keep doing what I'm doing. So I find it very also complex in a way. Do you think that we as individuals can make this different when it comes to a better planet, or also huge companies and corporations should be pressed and pushed towards a sustainable future, towards better climate?
I think you can live in a sustainable environment with minimal impact. It's very difficult to remove impact. I mean, I always say to be human is to consume. You know, that but we have to do it in a way that is more environmental, and it's possible because animals do it, yeah. But in the way that we've set up our society and economy, it's extremely difficult to. But we can be operating in a much lower impact. So the way that we're switching over to sustainable energy is a really good example. But at the same time, we've got to be tackling the pollution problem. And I think, yeah, the individual has to lead by changing their own habits, but them alone cannot solve the problem. You know, you've got to look at regulation, you've got to look at protest, and you've got to look at individual habits to solve the problem. You need all three of those things. You can't, one thing not working in the same direction, it's not going to be solved, you know?
Totally. And how did you come up with this idea with the latest movie about the glaciers? I've seen this movie and it's incredible. It seems required a lot of, I don't know, not only from planning and work and budgeting, but it just access to the places, the risks involved into this whole production, and it's a very powerful movie, I think, ended up. So first of all, thank you for creating such strong messaging out there through this hard work. But I'm very curious to hear, how did you, because it took you a long time to shoot it. How did you get involved into this movie?
Well, so when we brought out Plastic Ocean, it was extremely successful. I think in 2017 it was the most awarded environmental documentary. I don't think we were expecting it, but it was because we were highlighting such a big problem. And plastic, it wasn't like it was a new subject. We know for the last 20 years that we have a pollution problem. Like when I was a kid at school, in the 80s and the 90s, they were showing videos of mounds of plastic, piled up in landfills and things like this. But I think it was the fact that we had documented that it was going into the food chain, and that was a really big moment. Thinking, actually, this is bigger than just it looking ugly and smelling bad. This is actually going to devastate, the food supply. Um, anyway, when that film finished, we sat back, we took a little bit of a break. I went back into my business and I started changing the things that I was doing in my business. Like we removed plastic from the front of house in all of our restaurants, and packaging and all of these things. Craig, who's the director of A Plastic Ocean, who's a really good friend of mine, he said, Malcolm, what should we do next? We did such a big movie on a big topic. And I said, well, why don't we do something about climate change? This was 5 years ago. And we're sitting around the table, and I looked it up, and I said, 50% of Americans still believe climate change is a hoax. So 5 years ago, we were debating whether it was a political tool or agenda of politicians, and half of the population did not believe that climate change was real. And that was just crazy to me. And I remember actually sitting around a table of 6 people, and 2 of the people were arguing that this was a stupid movie to make, and that it wasn't true, and the planet's not heating up. So Craig and I just said, look, how do you convince a kid? Because if we can convince a kid that this is real and show them in a very simple way, then we can make a movie about it. And maybe we shouldn't target the older generation, because everyone's just jaded and they're full of conspiracy theories. Let's just make an environmental documentary that would interest children, that we could show them the evidence, that they could easily understand, and maybe give them a reason to be passionate about their environment. So we chose glaciers because every glacier around the world is melting. It's melting, and it's been tracked and studied for decades, so you can see the acceleration of melt, and that means that the planet is warming. And we want to engage kids, and we want to show them why, a kid that's never left the city, why they should even care that a glacier is important. At this point, we didn't actually know the significance of glaciers and what they mean to humanity. So that wasn't even in our realm of knowledge at this point.
Yeah.
And so we're like, okay, let's do paragliders and mountaineering and do all these things that we're really passionate about, and go around the world and take Craig, who's an ocean guy, who's a surfer, and take him up mountains and show him firsthand as low carbon impact as possible, as you can be in making a film globally. So that was the idea. And then during the process, we discovered that glaciers actually provide fresh water for 1/3 of the world's population. And places like Peru, which again, I didn't know this till we went and filmed there, is one of the driest places on Earth. It was like 60 million people reliant on the Cordillera Blanca Range glaciers, and they're going to be disappeared. At the time, they said within 40 to 50 years. Yeah. But every time you circle back to the scientists, they're like, no, we got that wrong. It's actually sooner. Yeah. And every year they say that. And there's actually a reason for why they say that. And it's because I actually heard this from the United Nations themselves. They're not allowed to use compounded results in their research, i.e. they're not allowed to take other people's research and say, well, my research says 50 years, but if you then take everyone else's compounded research and you add it all together, it's actually going to happen much quicker. And so they just kind of stay in their lane because they don't want to get criticized for publicizing something that looks 10 times worse than their data set in their lane suggests. So yeah, when we found that out, it was just like, wow, this is absolutely crazy. Like places are going to lose fresh water entirely within our lifetime. And that's going to cause mass migration. And that's probably going to be one of the biggest fallouts of climate change. And people don't even know about it.
That's
Like
wild.
it hasn't been documented. And so that's how this film came about.
Oh, that's really, really wild. All the stats are better provided there. For me, it was a lot of new information actually. And but yeah, I think everyone should watch it. And I guess great work what you're doing with the documentary. So I hope more people will get access, especially in the schools, because that's how maybe we can change the mindset and empower the change for education and teaching people and this generation that is still open for change. So I think that's really impressive. What was maybe most favorite part of creating films so far in your career? Because it's very different activity. It's very creative kind of business, but from a different perspective.
Well, look, I'm actually like I actually came into the films as kind of solving the business side of it.
Mm-hmm.
Essentially, when someone asks me what I do, I'm a startup specialist. In 23 years, I've started up 60 different businesses from
60.
many different
60 different businesses. Wow.
60 businesses. And so I'm a startup specialist. So I look,
Yeah.
and actually a restaurant is the perfect example
Uh-huh.
of needing all the different skill sets as an entrepreneur to start up. You need to be good at marketing, you need to
Yeah.
be good at branding, you need to be good at customer service, you need to be good at data collection, you need to be good at legal, entering into leases, negotiating, you need to financial model your projections, you need to be in charge of costs. Like, so it's like a little business all contained within four walls. So I came into the film industry not as a creative, but as someone who was helping to solve a business problem, which is, okay, we have an environmental documentary. We need funds to get it over the line. I wasn't, Craig shot it. He created the film, and he called actually myself and Matt in at the time. I think it was like 2015 or 16, and we came in kind of going, how do you market this? What are we going to brand it? And that's the approach we took to the film. What's the logo going to look like? How are we going to incite the most awareness from this? And then how are we going to then deliver that to the public? So that was A Plastic Ocean. So The Last Glaciers was the first time I did the film from start to finish.
Wow.
And actually, we managed to get IMAX to back a shorter version of the film, and it was the first environmental documentary that IMAX had ever partnered on as well. So it was just coming into a new industry with an entrepreneurial mindset, just kind of working it out as you go along, but having had an amazing previous team that had executed a very successful documentary.
Well, that's incredible, but IMAX backed it. Were you fundraising for the movie or doing the mix of bootstrapping and then getting some external funds?
Well, we funded it by ourselves for about 70% of the movie. This is the longer version. We have some external investors, and then we had IMAX come in and fund the shorter version of the film, which was more educational focused and purely built around education, where kids would come in, they'd watch the film, then there'd be a class afterwards, there'd be a syllabus where they'd sit down and learn with the teacher about the different things. So that was the IMAX production.
Okay. Wow, that's impressive. As a founder of so many businesses in different industries as well, let's say, how do you work with the global expansion? I've read somewhere that Mod32 Right became a global brand across even multiple continents. How do you ensure the quality and also the brand consistency across the locations? Are you actively involved yourself, or you create a great team that actually works on that?
A good leader is only as good as his team. You you need a good team around you. You need people that believe in the product. I always ask this question, and most people answer it wrong. When you walk into a customer facing company, you say, what's the most important thing in the company? Everyone's like, the customer. It's not. It's the team. It's 100% the team. Without a good team believing in the company, you're just not going to execute it correctly. So you spend a lot of time building the talent, going through the training, getting people that you trust around you, getting people involved in the company. That's been a big part of my success along the way, is giving ownership to the team members. So a lot of entrepreneurs come in and go, okay, this is my company, it's my equity. I'm not going to get you to participate in the success. And they see you make a lot of money and the employees just make their salary. So I would say sharing the wealth, sharing the load, it will allow you to do more. Yeah. And so if you've got a bunch, and a lot of entrepreneurs are not good CEOs either. They're terrible CEOs, but they're great creatives of companies, but they cannot execute the management of a company. And so there's a time and place where you've got to switch that over. I think a COO is just as important as a CEO. And so if the founder is taking on the role of a CEO, he needs a fantastic COO. The COO might be highly organized and approach the work in a different way. With Mott32, just coming back to your question, executing a luxury brand globally is extremely difficult. Yeah, it's all about consistency. We didn't get it right a lot of the times over the course of the business, but we learned from our mistakes. We stayed nimble. We adapted. We quickly changed what we got wrong, and we realized the strength of our company was that it was difficult to do.
Really?
Yeah, because if it was easy, everyone else would do it. Um, I think there's like two competitors. There's Mott32 and there's Hakkasan in that luxury Chinese global brand space. And without talking about Hakkasan, we'll just move them to the side. It's hard because Chinese cuisine is cooked predominantly by a Chinese back of house. So that means the staff that have the knowledge to be able to execute the food tend to be Chinese speakers. And then you mix that in a Western location in 5-star hotels, like the Mandarin Oriental, the Four Seasons, the Ritz-Carlton, all of these different places that we're partnered with. They don't have the language barrier. And then you also have to find the people and you have to find the talent. And so it's actually very difficult to replicate in many different locations. And so we bring all of the different solutions. I think a big part of it as well is I'm half English and I'm half Chinese. So I speak Chinese, I speak English. I grew up in the West, I grew up in the East. And I'm hyper aware of making people fit in together, because I spent a lot of my childhood not feeling like I fitted in. And so I had to be very quick at learning a culture and adapting and becoming part of that community. And when you move 18 times by the time you're 25, you get good at it. So I think having that kind of multicultural mindset is really important. And I think today it's like something which is a given. Yeah, when I was 12, I was the only Eurasian kid out of 600 in school. Today, every other, I don't know, we went to a school recently and there were 30 different nationalities within one school, that the world has changed within the 20 years dramatically. So I think you have to be welcoming to all cultures. You have to be adaptable to all tastes and opinions today. And I think that's also a really important way to approach a global business. You can't expect, taking your business to India and expecting it to be well received without adapting it some way to the Indian culture, for example.
Yeah, for sure. Wow. How was it for you growing up in so many different countries with the whole identity thing and sense of belonging? Because you were moving a lot from what now I understood.
The way I deal with it now is that I'm just a nomad. I'm just a nomad. I feel more comfortable being on the move than I do being in one place. And then after like 2 weeks, I start to get a little bit nervous, and I'm just comfortable moving. If you have the mindset that the home is the people around you and you, the habits that you have, and you can bring your habits with you. So like, oh, I get up and go to the gym, and then I do my emails and I have my cup of coffee. It doesn't matter which environment you do that in, as long as you keep your rituals and your friends and your family and your loved ones around you, you can be anywhere. Yeah. And be happy.
Sure, for sure. What mindset principles do you follow to achieve the success you have achieved so far with your businesses? Or
So
what's happening in your brains, actually?
there's two different questions there, I think. One is my involvement in successful businesses, and the other one is how do you manage being part of all those different businesses. So I'll answer the second
Good
question,
breakout. Yeah.
yeah, which is, look, you have to be highly organized, I think, and you've got to be disciplined. Communication is the key to everything. People are so used to communicating in a certain way, like people WhatsApp instead of pick up the phone. People, DM instead of emailing. And the world loses that personal connection, and I think you can achieve so much more in talking to someone for 2 minutes than you can writing to them for an hour. So that's one. It's just like keeping the personal connection with everyone that you work with, understanding what is emotionally going on with people around you, and being supportive, not just professionally, but also emotionally, because work has become so emotional because it's become much more stressful. We're working at a much higher intensity rate. We're working across multiple different time zones. Businesses now never have the sun set on them if they're global. That means you could be doing calls at 5 in the morning if I'm sitting in Europe with Asia, and still doing calls by 10 p.m. with, the west coast of the US. And then you have to just be mindful of your own internal battery. So I say the busier you get, the more important it is to rest. When I get really busy, the most important meeting I have to schedule is the hour and a half in the gym. Yeah. So like, if I miss the gym 3 days in a row, it starts to affect me. I don't get a break from myself. I don't get a break from my thoughts. I don't get a break from everyone else. You're gonna burn out. So if you're not efficient with your work, you're not communicating, and you're not allowing time for yourself, you can't take on more. And those are kind of the things that I've learned, and I don't compromise that. So the time off is just as important as the time on.
And when you're having your time off, for example, you mentioned hitting the gym for 1 hour and a half. Do you take with you the phone or some kind of, I don't know, usually people now what they do, they take podcasts or something to listen or scrolling. Do you do that, or you completely switch off and focus on your practice?
So I think like 15 years ago, I wrote a management guide for the managers in my company. And this was in the day, like, you had to be clocking in, clocking out. And I remember reading something that Richard Branson had written back then, where he basically said, oh, you can take as much holiday as you want. And we're sitting there clocking in at 9, clocking out at 6, being really tight with the annual leave. And then Richard Branson is breaking the mold, saying, hey, take as much holiday as you want. And so I was like, okay, I want to do the same. That sounds great, yeah? So as long as your work is covered, you can go on holiday. And then I was like, hang on a second. Like, if you want to take a month off, and that was like your dream to do that, why do I want to restrict that? Yeah, you're probably gonna quit, and you're probably gonna think about that, and then you're getting stressed with work. And so then we took it a step further, and we're like, you don't even need to come to the office. And we did this 15 years ago before COVID.
Whoa.
And I was like, your best ideas are going to come to you when you're not in the office. The problem now, so to answer your podcast question, if you don't give your brain space, so you just continue to input, you will not generate your best ideas. So your brain is like a filing system, and you stack all the papers up the whole day, and then you have to sleep, and during your sleep, it moves it from short-term memory to long-term memory. And so if you don't sleep well, you start to get really frustrated, you start to get short, and you start to forget things. Your short-term
Hmm.
memory starts to be really difficult to input stuff. And it's the same thing with ideas. So I don't try to listen to podcasts and things. I try to give my mind a break. And I do listen to music, but the music is like you're thinking, your brain's thinking through things, and I think that's really important.
Totally. I remember I caught myself once in my life where I was like, I've realized I'm just putting input, some kind of information sourcing, but I just literally burned out from having all this load of information, not being able to sort it out and kind of make any sense out of it anymore. Then I could not listen to any podcast for quite a long time.
Yeah.
I just needed a break.
Well, look, if I'm super, super busy and I'm behind, I'll still go to the gym, but I'll choose equipment that I can use my hands to use my phone. But that's not a long-term solution. Like, and honestly, the reason we didn't force people to come into the office is like the busier you get, it's more efficient to stay at home and do your emails in the morning away from other people and away from meetings. But going for a hike, you just think when you're out in nature and you're away from like technology in the four walls of your house or even a gym with other people with televisions everywhere. Honestly, those are when I have my best ideas. Or I'm remembering so many different things that I should have done, or your
For
brain
sure.
just it needs it.
For sure. Have you ever experienced a burnout while running so many businesses and also having a family and so many responsibilities?
Yeah, I had a burnout. In it was during COVID. So we had quite a big company during COVID, and I I had an argument with the board of one of my companies, and it was fire all the people and save the company, or try to continue to keep the company um, going. And during this period of time, I also got really sick at the same time. So I got a long-term illness, and so I was trying to keep up with the illness, keep up with the stress, fight the other people in the company because I didn't want to fire a whole bunch of people at the beginning of COVID. And I was like, we haven't got to the point where I need to fire them. And the there was a dispute, and the I was overruled, and they said basically I had to fire the people, but I felt we weren't there yet. And so I had to systematically go through the company and fire people. And because I was sick as well and I was stressed and we're working overtime, I had a burnout at that period of time. And it's the first time I like just didn't want to work. So I turned to my partner, Matt, at the time, and was like, I need 2 months out. And so I took the 2 months out and I came back, sorted out the health problems, sorted everything out. And that's when having a partner is good because you got someone to back you up. If you were by yourself in that moment, then the company probably would have just gone bankrupt. Yeah. So yeah, it was like a combination of different things, and it just caught me out at the time.
Oh, thank you for sharing. But I'm glad that you had the partner and that you managed to sort this out. And seems like things are moving so far so good. And you recently kind of joined the creators economy, right? Another company. Can you tell more a bit? How did Olyn come to your environment?
So yeah, I was introduced to the CEO of the company, Anna, who's a really impressive lady. She's built like an amazing company, and honestly, it took a while to understand what she'd built because it's just as much a fintech company as it is a media company, and they needed some help, and so I got involved with the business and started advice and eventually joining the board. We have a massive problem in the media industry, and I think if I tell you the story about the problem, you'll understand why I really like the idea of what Olyn is trying to do. But the industry now is spread amongst a whole bunch of subscription providers. Your Amazons, your Hulus, your Netflixes. And they're all fighting for viewers. I'm overwhelmed. Like when I look at my phone, I've got so many different ways to watch things. I also don't have the time to watch things. So when I am very selective about what I watch, like if I'm going to sit down and watch something, I want to be inspired by the end of it. I don't want to watch crap. I don't want to input crap into my brain. I take that approach with social media. I take that approach with what I'm watching. And so you've got all these people fighting for my screen time with my phone. And they all control the content. They control the budget of the content. And if you're a creator that believes in an idea like an environmental movie and you go out and you make it yourself, it's very difficult to find a place or a home for that. And also it's easier to make films and it takes smaller teams. And so there's less budget and there's less money in the industry. So everyone is suffering, basically. The short version of this story is all of the creators are finding it very, very difficult to do what they're good at. Olyn solves this problem because it's allowing films that are successful to be shared throughout a community because it's something that the community wants to watch. If I sell my film to Netflix and they pay me, a very small amount of money as they are now, because not to their own fault, because there's so much competition. Yeah.
Yeah.
I spent X amount of money making this film and they bought my film for a smaller amount of money. I'm losing money. Yeah. So environmental documentaries is a great example of movies that should be made that are being made less because less people want to watch it because it's not necessarily your Friday night entertainment. But if you watch an environmental movie and you're like, wow, this is amazing. I want like my sister, my brother, my mother to watch this film because it's really important and I want them to understand the urgency of the situation we're in, and you share it. If that film was well made, the craft has gone into it, the effort and the time has gone into it, and it gets shared within the community, it's going to do better. Yeah. And that's kind of the model that Olyn is bringing. It's allowing the audience to participate in the success of the film. It's really interesting on many different levels because when the creator is in charge of the way the film is distributed, we're all like small businesses, yeah. Like I was using the analogy of a restaurant, like encompassing everything. A filmmaker needs to kind of think differently to how they were thinking before. Before they were just making a film. But today people they watch a film, they like the products that are worn in the film, or they watched a documentary on cooking and they want to buy the cookbook. Like it's a small business. The creator doesn't just need to rely on the movie as his only source of income. And he doesn't need to rely on the networks to buy the film if he can speak directly to the consumer. So there's all of these different ways to monetize your content. So Olyn provides like so many different layers to that. You can partner with different brands. You can partner with charities. You can put products directly on the film page. It looks just like an Apple film page with the cast, the reviews, the trailer, except you can now feature the products that were in the film. Or you can recommend other people's films that are similar to your film that you want to. So if I'm an environmental documentary maker and I made a film about glaciers and the water system of the world failing, and my motivation is to drive awareness, I can then point you to other documentaries that you should watch, but I'm also monetizing. So I'm incentivized to drive my sales and put out my message, but I'm being rewarded. And my audience is also participating in that, and they're sharing, and they're also participating in the success of the film. And I think that new model is more powerful than being told what to watch by someone who's sitting there going, well, we're going to create this because that's going to beat my competitor, and we're going to do something, like, a Tyson Jake Paul fight to get everyone to come and try to get new subscribers to my to my Netflix channel. I mean, okay, I'm interested to watch it myself, but like it's not the kind of content I'm going to be putting into my brain every Friday night. I want to watch something that inspires me, that educates me, that teaches me, because I want to like try to be a better version of myself next week. And then the associate market is so much more powerful, because if you inspire me and I follow you and you're teaching me something new, and you watch something and you tell me that I should watch it because I respect you, I'm following you, and I like your advice, I'm I'm more likely to watch that content, and I'm more likely to connect to that content because we already have the association than being told by Netflix, oh, this is what's trending and you should watch it. Yeah. So I'm going to get higher quality content given to me always in that model.
This is great. Is it already up and live for creators to use it and also the audience?
It's actually launching this month. I think it's launching
Ooh.
on the 20th of June. Our film, The Last Glaciers, will be one of the first titles to launch with the platform. And then there's going to be a series of other big titles that launch throughout the year. Everyone we've spoken to in this space who have made amazing documentaries that have all kind of self-funded them, like in I call it the old school model. They can't wait for this to come out. Um, and we're in a social media influencer world today, and you follow the people that you follow and you listen to the people that you listen to. They're all making content. And if they recommend you content to watch, you're more likely to want to watch that content. I mean, it's a natural progression for how a platform should be going. So I'm super excited for it as well.
That's very exciting and it's happening pretty soon. So I'm really looking forward to about that. And
Yeah.
talking about social media and content, do you use social media yourself or more like just when you have to?
It's interesting having used social media for like, the better part of, I guess, 20 years, and to see how you kind of react with it or grow with it. So initially like using Facebook to connect with other friends, and then moving over to Instagram, and then using it to promote your business and to promote yourself and to build a brand for yourself was extremely important, and then your own personal relationship with it. So I think I spent a lot more time on social media, 5 years ago than I do now. And before I was posting a lot more, whereas now I should use it as the people that inspire me, the news that I want to be connected to, the feeds. Like I'm very specific about who I follow, and I think because when you see someone who follows 5,000 people or 2,000 people, it's like, well, firstly, Instagram is just showing you which of the 2,000 people they want you to see, not what you want to see. But when you get that number down to like 300 or 200, then you're seeing the feed of the people that you actually want to see.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important. It comes back to this like polluting your brain thing. Like if you overload your brain, you cannot operate. You cannot come up with good ideas. You can't be inspired by 2,000 people. Our brain is not wired to do that. 200's like a lot to take in the lessons from. So I don't know. I'm a great believer in the digital world to like minimize to maximize.
I find it very valuable for me to actually use social media to connect with friends and to stay in touch. Of course, to educate and get inspired, but that was one of the reasons why I started using it in the private mode, because I've been traveling and also changing places quite a lot. So the only
Yeah.
way I could actually stay connected, because you cannot call all the time all your friends. Sometimes you just have the whole agenda of work
Yeah.
meetings, maybe they have. So for me, I found it a very great way to kind of a bit still know about each other's life through social media channels. So I guess that's the use case I like.
Yeah, no, I use my Facebook to connect to my friends and my family, and I use my Instagram kind of like what the feed that's shown to me is like stuff that I'm interested in.
Nice.
But I find myself posting less and n- not wanting to post as much. And I think for me in the last like since COVID, there's a lot of negative energy on social media. I think a lot of people kind of stayed at home and there's a lot of jealousy and it's not a positive environment as much in the public space. Like I'm not talking about like
Hmm.
staying connected in smaller groups with friends and things like that, but I think it's the same as the restaurant industry.
Hmm.
The majority of the time that I hear from the customer is when we've done something wrong. If we've had a great meal, 1% might say that's a great experience. If we have a terrible meal, 9 out of 10 times you're going to get a complaint, yeah? And so it's like social media is an easy way for people to complain. And I think even myself, we have to remind ourselves that we all need to be kind to each other. We all need to focus on complimenting each other for the efforts that we do and making it a nicer environment for ourselves. I think having children also just kind of reminds you of that because you can't if you constantly tell your child off, you're not gonna get the best out of them. You've got to give them compliments. Like positive reinforcement is so much better than negative
Hmm.
reinforcement. So yeah, that's kind of my perception over like the last few years of where social media is going.
Wow. You mentioned a bit about this um, negative comments, especially in the hospitality industry. And of course, we always see that we tend to complain more than compliment, usually. Uh, have you ever been in the situation where you, maybe at the beginning of your business, you would take it very personally? If yes, how did you manage to distinguish business and
Right.
personal emotions? Or how did you deal with that?
Yeah, look, so being an entrepreneur, like I've failed a lot. Like we've businesses businesses have not worked. COVID shut down a bunch of businesses that I was involved in. It's the restaurant industry. Like as I said, you hear more about what you're doing wrong than what you're doing right, and people are very very quick to pick up the bad news. So I remember when I was starting out as an entrepreneur, there was a guy called Andrew. I won't tell you what business he ran, um, but he had closed a venue, and a lot of people were angry at him, and I was a friend of him, and I was just like, how do you deal with this? Like honestly, I think I was like mid 20s at the time, and he was like, you just need a thick skin, Malcolm. You need a thick skin, and I didn't quite understand what he meant till like I started failing on certain things and being attacked by people and I was just like, I'm trying my best. I didn't get it right. Just because I'm an entrepreneur and the head of a business doesn't mean you're always going to make the right decisions or get the business right. And you've got to, as long as you learn from your mistakes, pick yourself up, that's fine. But you've got to have a thick skin as an entrepreneur, or you have to have a thick skin as a CEO. Like when you're at the top of the business, people come to you more to complain than to tell, and no one tells you that you're doing a good job. Like when you're the boss, like you have to remind yourself, hang on a second, I'm doing my best. Like everyone's angry at me, my shareholders, this, directors, blah blah blah, but I think I'm doing a good job given the situation. So yeah, that's definitely a big lesson and something to remember if you're an entrepreneur.
How do you do that? How do you grow with thick skin?
When you don't, initially you don't. You let it affect you, you get emotional about it,
Hmm.
like it stresses you out, and then you start to like, your first failure is like losing your first love, like it's terrible. You've tried so hard, you've built your company, you put all your effort behind it, like you're so motivated, you've bet like everything you have on that business, and then it fails, and you've lost everything, and you've gone back to like ground zero, or even worse, like negative.
Hmm.
At those moments in your life is when you learn the biggest lessons. And I think if you look at anyone who's successful, they've all gone through a period of struggle. And so like when someone comes to me and says, "Hey, I need some advice. My business is struggling, I'm emotional, I'm like this." I'm just like, this is the best thing that's ever going to happen to you. So don't worry about it. Like, learn your lessons. I'll help you where I can, but like the things that you're going through now are going to shape your future, you know?
Have you ever had a mentor along the way while building businesses?
100%. One of my biggest philosophies, like when I wanted to get good at paragliding, I went
Get
and
the
got a mentor. I believe that you can be much more successful in a much shorter time if you have a very good mentor. And so it doesn't matter what you're doing. You know, if you're learning how to kite surf, if you're learning how to snowboard, if you're learning business, if you want to learn financial modeling, if you have one individual that you respect that's really good at what they do, that has already acquired the knowledges, has already gone through the mistakes, you're going to learn 10 times faster. And I think if you're trying to be an elite in anything, or you're trying to be good at multiple different disciplines, the only way to do it is through mentorship.
Totally. I couldn't agree more. I think it's you also get it more, then you get more times right the right way rather than always failing. Let's see how to get that one wave. I think that's a very good example with sports.
Yeah, I mean, it's also time, yeah. It takes so long to be a master at a craft. They say like you need 10,000 hours before you can be considered
Yeah.
a master. And like it's extremely difficult. And the problem is you spend your whole life acquiring the skills, and then by the time you're a master at it, you're 60. And so if you can shortcut that and learn from someone already and gain, a fraction of what he's learned, at least you fast tracked yourself. And I think anything that can save time, which is, in my opinion, the most precious commodity, then you should do it. So I'm a big fan of optimization, time saving, and shortcuts. Like if there is a quicker way to do something, or if there's a faster way to get there, or if you can spend less time working on it, like those are the things we need to adopt and embrace.
Totally. Do you use now AI to help you get faster to some places?
I do. My kids use it, and I have no problem in AI. Anyone who grew up in the last 20 years, we're all embracing technology as it comes. Now, I had the first banana phone, Nokia, and flip top Motorola back in the 90s, when battery lives lasted like 5 days.
It's
Like
getting
all the way
back
to,
to trend.
yeah, I know. And it's like my whole entire life is about this new product came, I'm going to learn how to use it as best I can. Yeah. And so it's the same thing with AI. It's just another tool.
Totally. Love it. I have a couple more questions for you, Malcolm. So one of them, how do you balance all the different activities and also having a family? A lot of people say like you have to choose either business or family or being an athlete, and it seems like with the right prioritization and some kind of set of values, you manage to do it.
Yeah, it is hard. I'm not going to lie. I think
Yeah,
as you get busier, certain things I find now get compromised. Um, I think I try to always prioritize time with my family. And actually I think if you're an entrepreneur with a family, you can actually end up spending more time with your kids because you're more flexible in where you can work. So I'm working all the time, but I will travel often with my kids and my family. So we travel more. The kids are always there, and so we're always connected, but I just make sure a portion of the day is spent giving them the full attention, doing something that they like doing. My son's really into spearfishing at the moment, and so we
that's
go.
cool.
Yeah, I know it's like such a random thing,
It's very
especially because
random.
in the middle of the mountain. And so like I just spend time with him, like teaching him how to free dive and snorkeling and about all the different fish. And like we were in Greece a couple of weeks ago, and I was teaching him about microplastics. It was crazy. We were in Greece and we were swimming through the water, and every 10 centimeters was a little bit of microplastic or fiber. I've ne like honestly, it was scary. Like I'd never seen so much plastic in the water. And this is like a remote island in the middle of the
No way.
Mediterranean, like on a super calm day. And I wish I had a GoPro on me. But yeah, like just those outdoor things, they teach more than just learning about the sport. They teach you about why you should, you know, preserve the environment. I think it's good to get your kids out as much as possible. So I just try to do. Um, yeah, I mean, if you get busy, you start compromising your health. You start compromising the exercise. You start compromising on sports. That's the first thing to go. But the mindset should be like, that's even more important the busier you get. Yeah. And so like I just try to keep reminding
Mm.
myself of that.
That's a really great reminder. I think as long as you're calm and balanced and ready from within yourself, then you can serve others and can you make sure that you spread and pursue the mission, what you're aimed to do.
I mean, can
Because
you imagine like an hour when you're busy and you go out for an hour of surfing, you can't use your phone.
yeah.
You're totally focused in the moment. You're practically meditating. You're breathing deep, so you're releasing all the stress through breath work. You're in a beautiful environment. You come back, you're full of energy, ideas, your brain is
Mhm.
like it's just so valuable. Then saying, "Oh, screw it, I'm not going to go surfing. I'm just going to do another hour of work."
Yeah.
Like you're not going to be optimized. You're going to be able to work much quicker and much faster. It's
Yeah.
actually a shortcut. It's a shortcut to go surfing.
To have some hobbies that you really want to do, it's a really shortcut. That's how I found it too, actually.
That's why, like, you've got to. When I see someone who's stressed in our company, I'm just like, "Have you been to the gym today?" It's like, "No." It's like, "Well, tomorrow morning, take the morning off, go to the gym. You'll probably end up working 2 times harder in the afternoon than just like coasting through, waiting for the end of the day." It's just a brainer.
But one of the questions I had on the top of my head, like you yourself being involved in so many wind and weather dependent sports, how do you manage to balance with the work and this inner drive to actually go for the paragliding session or for kite surfing back in the days when you said you were kite surfing more? How would you work around that? Shortcast, focus, and you just go when you can?
Yeah, so it's actually a really good question. I have a screen here where I just have my weather, and every morning I check the weather, and I check it for like the next 8 days. It's actually a 12-day forecast, but it's only reliable for 8 days.
Okay.
Yeah, but every like you're right. Everything I like doing is weather dependent. Like it's all wind and weather dependent. Like windsurfing, sailing, paragliding, kite surfing,
Mm.
and flying. But the reason I like those sports as well is there's like an academic side to it. Like to stay safe in those sports, you like the weather is as important as the sport itself, and it's you have to plan it. Like, oh, in 3 days it's good. Okay, cool. Like instead of the gym, I'm gonna go out for 2 hours and paraglide. And it's like you're planning it, but you also have to have the knowledge of what's dangerous and when you don't go, and
Hmm.
that's almost as important as going. So yeah,
I found it very
interesting.
difficult when I started kite surfing. I remember I had only one kite, 9 square meters, and I would go low winds, big winds. I would just go out, and then my indicator will always were, oh, okay, the guys moved to the 7 square meters. Okay, I need to get out because I was just struggling. Yeah, you have one kite you really want to learn, and you just, as many hours you put into the sports, as good you become. So I remember, like, I'm not sure if I would do that again now, but back then I was really going for it.
Well, I mean that's amazing. That's a sign of persistence and dedication right there.
Amazing. Okay. We're getting closer to the end. I have a final question that I ask every guest on this podcast for all the listeners. So, the guests to leave us with a question so we could ponder through the day and just think about. Do you have anything you would like us to leave after this episode is finished so we could think through?
I'll set it more as a challenge.
Mm-hmm.
I think as you get older, you start to lose touch of acquiring new information because we get too busy. And so one of the biggest things that I found has been really helpful in keeping me not 100% focused on work is acquiring knowledge by learning different things. And so I would say, if you're in a position where you're working a lot and you're building a business, what are the things that you would like to do next year that are completely different, that have always been on your list? And don't be scared to do it and take it on as another challenge, because it will always give you a different perspective to what you're currently doing. And by always taking on a different perspective in life, you're going to be able to add more value into what you're doing. And so what is that thing that you're waiting to do that is on the list? And just go and do it.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Where can people follow your journey?
So the film is the lastglaciers.com. You can watch, find out where to watch the film, and we'll have a link for watching it on Olyn. My Instagram, Malcolm G. Wood. But yeah, the website for the film is really interesting because it's got a whole bunch of solutions and indicators for what's going on. It's like an informative webpage where you can find out a little bit more about the climate, the solutions, the different things that we learned in our journey. So please visit the webpage and please watch the film, because we learn a lot from it. So I hope you guys do as well.
I second that. Thank you so much, Malcolm. Malcolm, all the links will be in the description of this podcast episode. And thank you for joining Perception Paradox, finding time and sharing your experience. So I'm pretty sure we learned a lot from you today. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks very much for having me on the show.